morning and good afternoon to everyone. And now I will inform you that I will switch off my video because I'm with my hotspot phone. So for a better sharing of my presentation, I will switch off my video. I don't know if you see my presentation.
We can see it. Yes, thank you.
Okay. We analyze the publication about the impact of palm oil on SDG, and the reason that lead to analyze this publication are related to the little discussion on socio-economic impacts of the production of palm oil. In fact, in these years, the main debate is being about the environmental impacts and in particular on biodiversity. Our analysis has considered the literature from 2010 to 2020, 10 years, and the goal of the review was to understand the contribution of palm oil and the impact on the 8 selected by us SDG. We had an emphasis on the sustainable schemes of palm oil production. We investigate the scientific literature to see how it talks about the production and the sustainable production and the contribution, to achieve this SDG. We, as I said, we selected 8 SDG and 82 publication mainly published since 2010 and strongly related to socio-economic impact. Through the review, we tried to give an overview and a visual impression of some of the numerical findings that we found, and most especially the timeline of the publication. In particular, we have focused on 82 studies, but the studies that have had that report, an openly positive or openly negative impact on every SDG. And the reason, it's many studies presented both impacts, positive and negative, but in terms of a visual point of view, would not have did anything to the chart, most especially on the proportion of these spheres. So you can see the X axis. We put the 10 years of the decade of the publication, and the other axis, the positive or negative impact. The distance of the spheres from the x-axis not represent the degree of impact, positive or negative, but it's just a graphic artifice to include in the same line the publication related to the same a single SDG. The size of the sphere show the quantity of a publication related to an SDG in a single here. About the visual impression, we can see for example, that SDG 8 that is economic growth, decent work and economic growth. We can see an overly positive impact, and the number of studies has grown over the year. In 2018 and 2019, we can see the size of the sphere. If we see the same color in the negative part of the chart, we can see that they are smaller the spheres. So we can say that the impact in over this SDG, repeat, is doesn't work economic growth, is a positive impact. Another example or negative way is the reduced inequalities. SDG 10, we can see that the green spheres are bigger in this part of the chart than this part where we have smaller spheres. That mean that the publication show more negative impact about this SDG, reduced inequalities, the SDG 10. This finding that we have touched on the chart, we can add that the SDG with no publication over the years. With more publication are the first, the second is no poverty, zero hunger, well-being, decent work, and reduced inequality. Are the main findings that I show you with the chart. After we can see we built another chart considering just the publication that show the sustainable production system. We analyzed 30 publication, and with the same method that I explained to you moments ago. So we put the publication above or below the x axis, and here is even clear that the publication that show a positive impact are more in than the previous. And in fact, you can see that the size of the sphere is bigger in the part of the chart above the x-axis. And in particular, from 2017 to 2020, so we in the last year, and consider that the SDG were established in 2015. Probably the attention to these themes has grown over the last few years. After this is our findings. And after we had a specific focus over each of the selected SDG, reporting the most evident and general themes related to the 8 SDG. In red, you can see the possible negative impacts on the SDG, and in bold, the positive impact. For this webinar, I show you just some of the findings regarding a summary of the findings regarding every SDG. You can see that no poverty, that oil palm contributes to the socio-economic development of local communities is a positive impact, and the certification schemes slow down the growth of poverty rates. But the negative is that sustainable certification schemes are too costly for smallholders today. For the zero hunger SDG, there is in the publication an improvement of food, show an improvement of food security of smallholders, and show that it's better crops intercropped with other the oil palm with other species to ensure this access to the food. Like for the negative part, there is a threat is the oil palm monocultures, and there is a risk of competition between land use and land grabbing. For the third will be good health and well-being is a very interlinked with the no poverty and zero hunger SDG, and we can see that the well-being of rural communities depends on the basic socio-economic condition before the development of oil palm plantation. And the negative effects are linked with the health of workers involved in the conventional palm oil production, because there are no protection for workers, harsh working conditions, use of dangerous chemicals. The quality education SDG is low. Is linked with the associated with the development of plantation and the increase of school infrastructure, but the improvement of children access to education takes place just as a partial compensation provided by palm oil companies to the local population. We can see that a worse impact is on these two SDG, gender equality. We recognize a low involvement of women in the supply chain, the entire supply chain of the palm oil, and low participation in the decision-making process. But we saw that in some areas like Africa and South America, there is an improvement for women involved in palm oil production. Negative impacts are in clean water and sanitation. We see that the main certification scheme like RSPO present criteria to protect water rights and shared use. But in general, there is a reported bad negative impact for the use of fertilizers and pesticides. For decent work and economic growth, we see that the contribution to the economic of the countries and has been recognized, providing employment along the entire value chain, and that sustainable certification scheme is identified like an improvement for the working condition and fair wages for the workers. But in general, the publication report of, like we see for the women, working condition with few protection, instability and seasonality of work and low wages. And last is the SDG 10, reduce the inequality. This is one of the greater problems that we identified in our review. These inequalities, as shown in the publication, as a contraposition between men and women, smallholders, big companies, local communities, and companies. There is a dichotomy that are part of the social and political context. The cultivation of the palm oil don't help to solve this type of conflicts. And there is the conflicts about, especially in the land ownership. But the sustainable certification scheme are identified as a possibility to balance the distribution of benefit and reduce this conflict. Like main findings, we can see that from this specific analysis, we tried the conclusion that the SDG 1 is the SDG that is interlinked with the others. I mean, all the SDG are interconnected between, but in particular, there are positive interconnection with some SDG. This in blue, the blue arrow, or negative in red. And instead, we saw that a sustainable production has a greater impact but in particular on the potential co-benefits coming from a sustainable production have an impact over this SDG: good health and well-being, quality education, clean water and sanitation. Final consideration is a resume that the palm oil, the oil palm plantation supports the economy of local communities and contributes to reduce poverty rates. But there are critical issues that we have to investigate in the future that to solve the conflicts relating the land access and ownership, gender inequalities, and the working condition. Main findings emerged by the analysis must be, we have to see it contextually to the country in which the studies were conducted. We did the final consideration and general consideration, but the specific consideration is about every publication is very peculiar of this publication. You can find our publication, this publication at this link. Soon we also take the opportunity. We will have a version in English, and I also take the opportunity to inform that the review has been submitted to environmental research letter, and is under review, like you can see of this. Thank you, and I finish my presentation.